crossing dimensions of time and space. Technology beyond comprehension. They are watching. They are waiting. They are already here.
I was scared to death.
It wants us, it wants us. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
With U.S.-Soviet tensions running high, an American-run NATO facility in England is under the strictest security. U.S. Airmen Jim Penniston and John Burroughs patrol the base perimeter in a vast wooded area known as Rendlesham Forest.
My rank was Airman First Class. I was a law enforcement specialist.
My job at RF Woodbridge was in charge of base security. It was a heightened time of the Cold War. I got a call on my radio. There was this sense of urgency in the security controller's voice.
We were heading down Eastgate Road to check the gate to make sure it was secure.
Eastern Radar reported that there was an unidentified bogey on the screen about 15 minutes before. That made it look very probable it was an aircraft that had crashed. That's the only logical explanation of what was going on. And we proceeded toward where the lights were in the forest.
It appeared the forest had like a white glow to it. At one point, the boy said it looked like kind of like a Christmas display, different colored lights coming on and off.
As we got up to the tree line, the whole situation changed. I knew it was an aircraft crash. It was void of things such as the smell of burning fuel, the noise the fire creates in the woods. Our radios started to break up, and that was unusual.
There was a loud shriek that went off like something was startled or very, very upset.
It went from a possible aircraft crash at that point in time to a possible security situation. There was scurrying of animals running away from the area. It was very strange. I thought we were in trouble, yes, in trouble. I had a situation in front of me I had never, ever, ever encountered. I was scared to death.
There was a bright flash of light.
It blinded us. As I started to get up off the ground, what formed was the silhouette of a triangular craft that was probably about 20 feet in front of me. I was just totally perplexed by it. As I walked up closer to it, I could feel electricity jumping like on my clothing and skin, hair. It looked like black glass. It's very shiny. But in the actual skin of this craft, running through it, was different colors. There would be globs of whatever, blue and orange. I was looking for crew compartments, intake, exhausts. It wasn't aerodynamic. I mean, it had no flaps and didn't have anything that normal aircraft would have to fly. I paced off the side of the craft and measured about 9 feet long, about 6.5, 7 feet high. And as I started walking around it, though, I got a glimpse of some type of writing on it. My first reaction was, oh, thank God. It's going to say United States Air Force on it. It's going to say NASA on it. And to my disappointment, it wasn't writing. It was like glyphs, pictorials on the side, which made it even more of a mystery. These glyphs they measured about 3 feet long and about 5-6 inches high. I ran my hand across. It was like sandpaper. It was very rough to touch. There was a larger one above it, a large circle with a triangle in it, and I touched that one. You can see anything around me, all I can see is this bright, intense white light. They didn't stop. The intensity of it did not stop until I took my hands off of it. And in a blink of an eye, it was gone. There was no air displacement. There was no sound. I mean, it's impossible for an aircraft to do that. What kind of technology is that? I was just overwhelmed. What just happened to me?
There it is.
Whatever it was shot straight up above the trees.
We ran after it because we thought it was going to re-land. When we seemed to get close to it, it would get farther away.
And we had no idea what we were dealing with.
Security Patrol 1, please report.
10-4 escape. Returning on foot.
Whatever it was departed out towards the coast. We were pretty amazed what we had just seen happen.
Don and I were discussing, like, how can we explain this? How can we go back and tell them all that we have seen?
Why are you drawing that?
Well, I'm drawing what we saw.
Well, I didn't see that.
What do you mean you didn't see that? You're with me.
I didn't see that.
There's a difference in memories between what Jim remembered happening as we hit the ground and what I remember. What I saw was a red oval type sun-like object. From the time I hit the ground until the time the object departed was a very brief period of time. I didn't see Jim walk around the object. I couldn't really explain what it was or give any rationale behind what I saw.
As we returned to Eastgate, there's no discussion at all in the vehicle on the way back. I mean, we're just speechless.
What time you got?
4:45.
Upon getting back to base, which seemed like being out there of only a period of 45, 50 minutes, something like that, it was actually more like 2.5 hours. Well, I tried to write the time issue off as adrenaline, but I couldn't make that work.
So we weren't sure what we were dealing with, but we knew we needed to go back out there and take a look around in the area.
On the morning of 26th, we headed back out to the East Gate. Was I scared? Sure. Sure, I was scared.
What do you got?
I wanted to know what was going on.
After witnessing a mysterious craft in England's Rendlesham Forest, U.S. Airmen Jim Peniston and John Burroughs are missing time, and their memories don't match up.
I had no idea what we were dealing with. I had nothing to compare what I was seeing to anything that I've ever seen before. After we briefed the shift commander, we decided that we were going to go back out to the area because it was daylight to get a better look around.
On the morning of 26th, We headed back out to the East Gate. Was I scared? Sure. Sure, I was scared. But having evidence or having something physical to say this happened was paramount.
What do you got?
9 feet.
There was 3 indentions in the ground, triangular, all equal distance apart. That was the landing site.
What's that?
There was damage to the trees. There was tree limbs on the ground and damage to the canopy above. That made it more real. We were trying to draw some correlation to something military or anything out there that could explain what we were dealing with.
We were in training all the time for aircraft identification. Everything from Russian aircraft to, Warsaw Pact type aircraft to Chinese aircraft. So we could readily identify them just by their silhouette. But it didn't fit any mold of any type of aircraft I've ever seen in training or have been taught to understand.
There it is.
Whatever we were dealing with that night is something I've never seen any military craft be able to do.
Nick Pope is a former UFO analyst for the British Ministry of Defense.
December 1980 was a period of extraordinary international tension. It was all about dealing with the potential threat from the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact. I theorized that a Soviet craft of some sort might be responsible. Some spy plane or unmanned aerial vehicle. Maybe the strange symbols that Jim Penniston saw were actually the Russian alphabet.
I knew it was a Russian aircraft. The glyphs are perplexing. They were completely foreign. I think the closest thing I could foresee that to be is something maybe Egyptian, maybe.
The U.S. military has a long history of top-secret aircraft with unique design characteristics. Dr. Scott Miller is a professor of aerospace engineering.
A lot of stealthy aircraft are going to have this deltoid planform. It's very, very common. And the lights are typically located on the extremity of the aircraft, so that can create a very strange pattern. Probably the strongest interest in trying to introduce technology to reduce the radar signature started happening in the Cold War. The U-2, there were variants of that airplane where they were trying to make it much more stealthy. The SR-71, the Blackbird, and its actual even darker, blacker variant of that airplane developed by the CIA called the A-12 were intentionally designed to have a much reduced radar signature and a reduced infrared signature and create strange perceptions by people if they see them at night.
But everything an aircraft would do, this did not do it. It had no engine sound or nothing like that. There was no sound at all. I mean, it's impossible for an aircraft to do that. The technology was so advanced, it had to be something far beyond what we were capable of producing. When I finally got to bed, I was having trouble sleeping. I was very agitated. I couldn't get these ones and zeros out of my mind. And every time I shut my eyes, I could see them. I got up because I couldn't get to sleep. I grabbed the notebook that I had out there that night, and I started looking through it again. Then I decided, well, those ones and zeros, I can still see them, so I might as well record them. And the more I wrote, the better I felt. But you don't dare tell anybody. What if I told my commander that? The part about the ones and zeros. I'm sure they would have thought it was a breakdown. It would have been a career ender. I retired the notebook. I put it away.
While Penniston tries to forget the strange encounter, Burroughs hopes to learn more. 2 nights later, he returns to Rendlesham Forest with a group of airmen led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt.
There was more activity outside Woodbridge Base. The on-duty flight at the time again saw strange lights in the woods. Colonel Halt was selected to lead a group of guys out into the forest to try to make sense of what was going on.
Hazard a guess.
Colonel Hall at the time was the deputy base commander for the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing at RAF Bentwaters. He was second in command for the base.
I just wanted to know if it was back again or what we were dealing with. I was looking for a rational explanation. Colonel Halt brought one of his little microset recorders with him. He was doing little short clips on what they were dealing with.
Almost pulsating.
He said they'd seen strange lights in the sky flying around, and he pointed to two that looked like they were like doing a grid search. All of a sudden, in front of us, we had a blue transparent light come streaking towards us. And then a white object kind of appeared up above and then floated down and was sitting out there in the distance. I asked him for permission to go towards it to see if I could get a closer look.
Yeah, go.
Go with it.
As we started going towards it, it appeared to start to come towards us. Sergeant Stenson was on my right. He went down to the ground. He saw me go into the light. He saw me disappear. He saw the light explode. And I was gone for several minutes before I reappeared. I have no recall of it. I have no memory of what happened. The next thing I know, I was standing in the field and whatever it was gone.
John?
It was like, what just happened?
What the hell was that? John?
If you listen to what Sergeant Peniston says, at one point, the bright light exploded. And Sergeant Bustinza saw me go into it, and that's what happened. After the incident, I went down to let Jim know what happened on Saturday night and into Sunday morning.
A few days later, I was called up to Colonel Hall's office along with John. We listened to the tape.
They are moving at extremely high speeds.
We had a real-life encounter going on that was being recorded as it happened.
I think Halt was trying to reassure us. I'm confirming what you guys see. It happened again.
I don't know, sir.
I was actually relieved because that means it was no longer just on John and I's shoulder. It means that we had other people in the Air Force that can confirm a second sighting on it.
But before Peniston and Burroughs can solve the mystery of what they saw, they are contacted by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
We received a phone call to report in to OSI.
It's clear to me that the people involved in the aftermath of it aren't happy that we're doing what we're doing, and they definitely could be threatening to us if we continue this.
This isn't what I remember.
The incident was to be kept quiet.
Where's the rest of it?
In December of 1980, Jim Peniston and John Burroughs witness an unusual craft in Rendlesham Forest. While Burroughs and several other airmen document a similar encounter 2 nights later, Peniston, fearing for his military career, tries to forget what he saw.
I was very concerned that there was going to be a further investigation, more prying into this situation. I received a phone call to report in to OSI the following day. They wanted me to write a full statement. They were very adamant and clear about it. They said, you write exactly what happened out there, everything. I was intimidated. They are serious. I mean, they told me that, you know, either I cooperate with them, tell them everything, or that's it. The career, it's done. And I said, well, am I going to lose my job over this? And they said, no. They said, we want you to explain everything as it happened, and then it's over with. Exactly what I wanted. I wrote a 4-page handwritten account of what happened. I told him about the flash of light, told him I had contact with the craft.
But then Peniston is presented with a deal he didn't bargain for.
15, 20 minutes later, they came back in, couldn't call it in. They have a type page, about a quarter of a page, maybe a little longer. They made me read it, I think it was 2 or 3 times. So it was very sanitized. It was very generic. They says, and this is the official story, the official account that you tell anybody that asks about this.
This isn't what I wrote. Where's the rest of it?
I thought that we had a code of conduct and honor, and you know, you wouldn't write false statements or nothing like that. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But OSI can operate outside the realm of normal chain of command. They were completely within their span of control to do that. It did not sit well, but orders are orders. That's how it works. It was disturbing. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't a war criminal. And that's the way they were treating me, like I was a captured spy or something. I think the government knows this is of significance. I believe that they don't want the public to know.
There would have been a number of very good reasons to keep this secret. Firstly, I think no government on Earth could admit that our sophisticated air defenses are effectively irrelevant, and that we're facing a technology that we simply have no defense against.
Peniston and Burroughs comply with the order to keep the incident secret.
It was best for this to be, you know, let sleeping dogs lie. And that's what we did.
I departed the base on a normal 2-year rotation in July of 1981. After the incident happened, I did my best just to stop thinking about it.
But that proves impossible.
I started not feeling well.
I experienced a number of different things that were related to the initial contact. I started experiencing dizziness. I was having inner ear problems and balancing problems. Three years after the incident, I was stationed at my next base, and I had a heart infection that came up. It was very rare.
After I left Bentwaters, I started having more problems, and I ended up being diagnosed with a heart murmur. The doctors that were working with me couldn't give me an explanation on what was going on. We didn't find anything out until they released the British document.
The British government is in the process of declassifying and releasing its entire archive of UFO files.
An official report states that Colonel Halt and his team returned to Rendlesham Forest days after the second sighting to investigate.
Colonel Halt recorded the levels of radiation, and these were written up in his official report into the incident that was sent to the Ministry of Defense.
Nevels, can I get a reading, please?
The colonel went out with a team which included a disaster preparedness NCO, Sergeant Nevels, and he had a Geiger counter, and he recorded the levels of radiation out there on our landing site and in the immediate area.
Strange. The peak readings in radiation turned up in 3 indentations that had been found in the forest floor. The Defense Intelligence staff assessed that the radiation levels had been significantly higher than background.
I made the connection that the dizziness was caused by the radiation from that incident, because that was the one thing that the medical personnel were asking me about, if I was exposed to radiation. You know, I had a dilemma there. They said, do I bring up, I'm not supposed to talk about the incident. So do I bring up I had radiation exposure, or do I lie to the doctors and say that I never had? And I followed my orders, and I said no, I had never had radiation exposure, even though I knew I had.
When I came in the Air Force, my entry physical clearly shows I came in with a clean bill of health. When I got out in 1988 of active duty, my exit physical shows that I had several issues with my heart. There's no explanation other than the fact that right after the incident I started having heart issues.
Given the assessment of the radiation levels at the landing site, I believe that the government and the military owes John and Jim an explanation.
But with the military refusing to provide any answers, it's up to Peniston and Burroughs to solve the Rendlesham mystery on their own.
We finally came to an agreement that I would go under hypnosis to see if I had any kind of, anything came up involving, once I got close to it, if anything came out.
How do you feel?
It's calling to us to come to it. We've got to go to it. It's telling us to come to it.
I was possibly pulled up into it.
It wants us, it wants us.
Following an encounter with a mysterious craft in Rendlesham Forest, Jim Peniston and John Burroughs suffer from increasingly poor health, and the U.S. military is unable or unwilling to explain why. Forced to search for answers on their own, they turn to hypnosis.
I went out to California where the hypnosis was conducted. The guy that was doing the hypnosis at that point did a very good job about just letting me tell. The hypnosis lasted between 2 and 3 hours and went through a pretty good detail of the incident from beginning to end.
Roger, we copy, we copy. We're moving in slowly. It gives the impression of an object, but it's mostly light, all light. It's calling to us to come to it. We've got to go to it. It's telling us to come to it. We can feel it.
During the hypnosis, it comes out that I did have some kind of interaction with something out there.
We've got to get to it. We've got to get to it. We've got to know what it wants.
It's very clear in my hypnosis. I was being drawn towards it.
It wants us. It wants us. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
I was possibly pulled up into it. I believe that I was inside whatever it was while Sergeant Peniston circled the object. It gives a decent explanation on why I don't remember Sergeant Peniston walking around it.
You want to know why now?
Further sessions explore what happened during Burroughs' second sighting when he met with Colonel Halt in the forest.
The hypnosis goes into a little bit more detail the second night.
The lights are back again. I said, wow, I knew they were coming back tonight. Weird thing. We had things over on top of it. They were making contact with our mind.
The object wanted me out there.
I'd like to get another look. Yeah, go. Stinzer, go with him.
What is it, sweetheart?
I'm in something.
What are you in?
Don't know. My mind is in something.
I believe that I did end her something. That I was inside.
Whoa!
It's all right, sweetheart. What is it?
Oh, there was like 20 of them.
What do they look like?
Little specks of blue lights.
Okay.
I have contact with something from somewhere else. I'm having a dialogue with them.
What are they?
It's all right.
Oh, they're coming at me. Now it's getting bigger and bigger, like milky white. object or substance. It just keeps going up, down, wider, smaller. Then there's an eye or something behind it. The hole's opening up.
Do you see anything in the hole?
No.
What does the hole mean to you?
Clearly I had some kind of interaction with an intelligent something.
Dr. Mark Schneegert specializes in astrobiology and the search for intelligent life beyond Earth.
Life originating someplace else in the solar system of the galaxy and being either accidentally or purposefully brought to Earth is in the realm of possibilities. Intelligent life on another planet could be very different than intelligent life on Earth. The organisms may not have hands and eyes. They may not walk and talk like we do. They may use their intelligence in different ways to be successful. But it's much harder for us to conceive of and much harder for us to look for because we have no examples.
I'd never seen a UFO prior to this, so I had no way to know whether it was possible or not.
Like John Burroughs, Jim Peniston remains haunted by the events of December 1980.
Before that night, my perception of UFOs, meaning that ET, alien, that kind of thing, they never existed. I mean, we were safely alone in the universe. Then it all changed coming out of that woods that night. I was only getting maybe 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. So that's when it was suggested that I get a psychiatrist and maybe help me with the sleep disorder. During my hypnosis, there was a large jump in time from the time of being out in the woods.
His therapist is unable to penetrate beyond the moment Peniston touched the craft.
Stuff that I just can't remember. And she says, something traumatic happened to you. I always skip over that and go back to being interrogated at OSI. No matter how she tried, she couldn't break that.
No. Permutations again.
And she says, that is the sign of a memory block being put in. Things to prevent me recalling what happened. She said, I've never seen it before. I've only read about it. All I remember was the first time I went into the OSI building and gave my initial statement and wrote it all out.
Just can't talk. Can't tell.
Under the hypnosis, there was more encounters with being interrogated at OSI.
Did they do something to you physically?
Yes. Shot. It involved having sodium pentothal given to me.
Where did they give you the shot?
All right. Session.
I've told you everything.
You do this all day and night.
Jim Peniston.
I can't see why they would treat a member of their security force like that.
Drugs, in this context, could have two distinct purposes: to get to the truth or to hide the truth. The Americans and the British would be absolutely horrified if the entire complicated and effective air defense network had been so totally compromised that a craft could just get through like that. Everyone would have a reason to keep quiet about this.
But repeated sessions with the therapist begin to break down the memory block. months after an encounter with a strange craft in Rendlesham Forest, Jim Peniston undergoes hypnotherapy and discovers a memory block. Repeated hypnosis sessions reveal he was involved in a second unsettling interrogation at OSI.
I didn't remember that I had been back down to OSI. I didn't know I went back through that.
And they looked to the night of December 25th, 1980, for answers.
The only thing that I couldn't recall was the 45 minutes out in the woods, where I would jump to the being back at the main base.
Looks like right. I can't read it. I got a touch source.
You touch the glyph. What's happening?
I see the craft. It's a white light.
I started remembering, and as I remember bits and pieces, all of a sudden those bits and pieces became chunks, and the chunks became a full story.
Their mission is contact with us. They are time travelers. They are us.
They are us from
the future.
When I first heard myself on these films saying this, I thought it was another person talking. It was all in disbelief because it's beyond my thinking, that kind of stuff. What I knew about time travel to that point was a movie that came out in 1960 called The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. That was it.
Is time travel anything more than just fantasy? Dr. Ron Mallett has dedicated his career to studying the controversial theory of travel through time.
Time normally flows in a linear way from the past to the present to the future. However, Einstein's general theory of relativity says that time can be altered by gravity. The stronger gravity is, the more time will slow down. Black holes can be thought of as sort of natural time machines because a black hole causes an extreme bending of space, it causes an extreme bending of time. This means that the closer you get to a black hole, gravity is getting stronger and time is slowing down. So if you get near the edge of a black hole, time comes nearly to a halt. If I can twist time into a loop, then I can go from the past to the present to the future by using light, circulating light. You can cause a twisting of space, and this twisting of space can lead to a twisting of time. One can only go back in time to the moment that the device was created. It's the device that creates the effect.
I actually did not think the time travel was possible, but I'm starting to wonder if it's the only explanation.
Through hypnosis, Peniston uncovers one more buried memory.
The light was just a constant light. It whited everything else out. I couldn't see anything else. And then all I seen was ones and zeros coming out. It was like crazy.
I can see the binary code.
During that hypnosis is the first time I heard the words binary code. And it was done in the context of when they asked what I was seeing, I respond by saying,
I can see the binary code.
Alexander Furwarn is a professor of computer science.
Binary is a mechanism for encoding a language. In a sense, a human language like English is a code, right? So we're encoding ideas into that language. Binary simply lets you do it in a different way. Binary code is commonly used to encode secret messages. Around 1980, binary was not well known. We were in the process of putting our toe into the binary computation for the home market.
Looking at Jim Peniston, I'm not sure I see here a guy who, back in 1980, would have been able to write binary code. He's not a mathematician. He's not a cryptographer. He doesn't know binary code.
But during the hypnosis, I actually called binary code. And I said, this binary code is from time travelers, it's from the future, and these people are us.
Colonel?
In spite of credible witnesses and physical evidence, the military remains silent on the strange object seen in Rendlesham Forest in December of 1980. No longer willing to keep quiet, Jim Peniston and John Burroughs turn to hypnotherapy to uncover the details of the encounter, which leads them to one last piece of the puzzle. A mysterious pattern of ones and zeros known as binary code.
I kept the notebook. I always felt that they had a meaning of some kind. I had an independent company go ahead and look at the codes.
The actual problem with binary code is that unless you have a way of decoding it, the actual code itself, the zeros and ones, can be interpreted in many ways. If only a single person did it, well, that is, that person's opinion. If 3 independent people did it, then perhaps it's not their opinion, perhaps there's consensus. And if the message is consistent, then you have a code.
I sent them off to an expert in Australia, and an expert on the eastern seaboard of the United States. And they independently deciphered them and came up with the same information.
It was a shock to me when there was actually a message.
They're here for the exploration of humanity. That's what the code said.
Further independent analysis of Peniston's binary code reveals something even more shocking.
It showed 7 geographical locations.
Longitude and latitude can certainly be represented using some type of binary code. In fact, a modern GPS system relies on being able to tell you where you are using a binary code.
The 7 locations have been deciphered, and they show places around the world.
There's a point in the American Southwest, which is Sedona. There's a point in Central America near Belize. There's a point in South America near the Nazca lines. There's a point in Greece, a point in Egypt, and a point up in the mountains in China.
Gave a grid coordinates west of Great Britain, which is what they called High Brazil. I believe the significance of these areas is they're naturally occurring electromagnetic areas.
These electromagnetic fields could be possible gateways to other dimensions. If you go to these sites, there's glyphs, there's drawings on walls showing some kind of encounter with something from outer space.
Peniston and Burroughs now believe they experienced some kind of contact with time travelers from the future. But the military still doesn't acknowledge that anything unusual occurred in Rendlesham Forest.
I believe they're well aware that the incident we had happen that night, it was an incident that involved this type of phenomena.
The official word from the United States Air Force is that nothing happened at RAF Betwaters or Woodbridge on the dates in question.
I don't rule out the possibility that this was extraterrestrial, but neither can I say that I've seen or am aware of any definitive proof. So far as I'm concerned, this incident is unexplained. When I've met Jim and John, there's a certain haunted look in their eyes. When I speak to them about this incident, the tone of voice, you can tell they are still troubled by this.
Every step toward getting an answer, the better off we are.
I'm more concerned about closure finally understanding what we encountered in the field back in December of 1980.
When we find the answers and what it was, it ends for us. We want our involvement with the incident to stop. That's all.
In this documentary, you will see miraculous UFO footage that has been authenticated by top UFO.
The documentary featured an extensive summary of the footage, the canisters containing the footage, an expert analysis from the likes of Stanton Friedman. One film expert noted in the documentary that the footage came in an old Soviet canister that had information labeled on it that was consistent with info written directly on the film reel. The numbers on the film's header matched the canisters they came. The header of the film had the crest of the KGB on it, and the term for top secret is shown in the first few seconds of this footage and image to the right. Having real-looking alien footage is one thing, but including the original film reel canisters means you are extremely close to proving 100% authenticity. This is something that has traditionally lacked in other more popular alien videos such as the widely known Alien Autopsy or the Alien Interview videos. Several KGB documents. In the documentary, several KGB documents are produced to prove the film is authentic, along with credible testimony from a former Soviet KGB operative who claims to know about the event. At first everyone believed that those debris were part of some novelty aircraft manufactured in the United States or England, said Pavel Klimchenkov, a former KGB operative, but having done some measurements material analysis, we came to the conclusion that none of the domestic or foreign manufacturers known to us could have produced this apparatus, at least not in the conditions existing on this planet. Along with Pavel's testimony, authentic KGB top-secret documents were obtained by the filmmakers, allegedly costing them $10,000. The documents described in detail a crash site recovery operation of a disc-shaped object and organic remains. Based on the credible testimony, KGB documents, expert film analysis and the general good feeling one gets when watching this interesting crash site video, it is safe to assume that this film indeed may be authentic. What about the autopsy? This footage will be posted in our second part article along with thoughts and analysis, actors, training exercises, skepticism. Some have put forth the argument that an American production crew filmed the footage in March 1998. These claims are put forth on websites claiming to know the truth about this footage. To date they have failed to show even one current photo of any of the soldiers in the film, nor any statements from the actors that they were indeed only actors in this film. This should be easy to obtain if the footage was recently filmed. Some have put forth the argument that an American production crew filmed the footage in March 1998. These claims are put forth on websites claiming to know the truth about this footage. To date they have failed to show even one current photo of any of the soldiers in the film, nor any statements from the actors that they were indeed only actors in this film. This should be easy to obtain if the footage was recently filmed. Another theory suggests the film was a training exercise. Yet no one has produced witnesses verifying this claim. One skeptical viewpoint suggests that the object's thickness is far too small to support any would-be alien pilot. The craft's outer edge as seen on the image is only 12 to 36 inches. However, it is not necessarily indicative of the overall thickness of the craft. The image was taken from the only part in the video sequence where the craft's edge is visible, and since the camera never goes behind, there is no way to tell how much depth the craft may have on the other side. Additionally, if you consider the side facing us may actually be the bottom, we can easily see that this craft can easily fit the traditional flying saucer shape as demonstrated by the below images. In this documentary they claim that, since they only were able to acquire 4 canisters of film, more film footage of this incident is available, such as the entire digging, cleanup, and inside the craft investigation. To this date, almost a decade after it went public, no other videos have surfaced. a UFO crash site allegedly filmed by the Russian KGB in March of 1969 in the Sverdlovsk region of Russia. The footage was later obtained by documentary filmmakers who then published the movie, The Secret KGB UFO Files. A film expert noted in the documentary that the film came in an old Soviet film can and the numbers on the film's header matched the cans they came in. The header of the film has the crest of the KGB on it and the term for top secret. An autopsy of the alleged pilot of the UFO is seen in the documentary film. Soviet doctors examined the burned torso of the entity and it is revealed that the 3 doctors died 1 week later, all from cerebral hemorrhages. Death certificates are presented as proof. Several KGB documents are produced to prove the film is authentic. Some have put forth the argument that an American production crew filmed the footage in March 1998. These claims are put forth on websites claiming to know the truth about this footage. To date they have failed to show even one current photo of any of the soldiers in the film nor any statements from the actors that they were indeed only actors in this film. This should be easy to obtain if the footage was recently filmed. Another theory suggests the film was a training exercise. Yet no one has produced witnesses verifying this claim. UFO aliens may have helped build pyramids of Giza, says Cairo University archaeologist. Head of the Cairo University Archaeology Department, Dr. Ayla Shaheen, in December 2010 had told an audience that there might be truth to the theory that aliens helped the ancient Egyptians build the oldest of pyramids, the pyramids of Giza. On being further questioned by Mr. Marek Nowak, a delegate from Poland, as to whether the pyramid might still contain alien technology or even a UFO with its structure, Dr. Shaheen was vague and replied, "I cannot confirm or deny this, but there is something inside the pyramid that is not of this world." Delegates to the conference on ancient Egyptian architecture were left shocked. However, Dr. Shaheen had refused to comment further or elaborate on his UFO and alien-related statements. Down below is 90's The Secret KGB UFO Files documentary, that deals with the fact that Russian had already discovered the tomb of alien humanoid in Egypt and something is beneath the pyramid. The Secret KGB UFO Files documentary interestingly supporting the head of the Cairo University Archaeology Department, Dr. Ayla Shaheen, claim as well. Actually, ancient Egyptian writings very often talk of beings from the sky opening and bright lights coming down to teach them technology and give them wisdom. Many pictures and symbols resemble UFOs and aliens. Possibly aliens built the Great Pyramid. And these solid long-lasting construction techniques were adopted by the Egyptians. Ancient Egyptian legends tell of Tep-Zepi, or the first time. This is described as an age when sky gods came down to earth and raised the land from mud and water. They supposedly flew through the air in flying boats and brought laws and wisdom to man through a royal line of pharaohs. And of course, this was all thrown out the window when Christianity came along. Keep in mind that the gods were the one and only religion that there was. No other conflicting beliefs? Why? Well, because it was fact, not faith. The modern church would have you believe that it's just a myth. But you have to ask yourself, on the edge of Occam razor, what truly indeed is more likely? There has always been the question. How did the Egyptians feed and care for the 100,000 slaves that it would have taken to build the ancient structures like that of the pyramids in Egypt? 1 minute it is a very backwards country and almost overnight a highly advanced and technological culture sprung into existence. We now have the answer to that very question and evidence that the Egyptians had help, extraterrestrial help at that, thanks to Russia, the KGB, and a top-secret project called Project ISIS. Astrophysicist, neurologist and science advisor in Advanced Propulsion System gained access to the files of Project ISIS. This was a top-secret project brought about by KGB concerning the discovery of the tomb of the visitor in 1961. Up until Sci-Fi purchased this exclusive footage from an agent of the Russian mafia, it had never been seen outside the top-secret facilities of the KGB. Sci-Fi showed it one time on television, and as it stands today, no evidence of this film or the project is available. Except what we have copies of here given to us by a client that had taped the original show. This video is a powerful documentary with actual footage filmed by the KGB and verified by specialists in the field. Authentic film footage. If we can somehow bring attention back on Project ISIS and prove it out, it will change the history of the beginning of the civilization of man. During the Cold War, Nikita Khrushchev was determined to show the world that communism was superior over the democracy. As he realized that it would be too costly to compete with the US in the space race, Khrushchev chose to go the other route. Having over 300,000 agents in the secret police and espionage organizations, he focused most of this resource on alternative science, such as paranormal phenomena, psychometric weapons, biogenerators and mind-altering machines. 1920s, during the Stalinist regime, a dark room was created where the KGB conducted psychotronic weapons research on prisoners sentenced to die and political dissidents. After 1936, these files were transferred to the secret archives of the KGB, continuing on with their paranormal research. Khrushchev achieved great success with his biogenerators and machines to alter human minds, which worried, naturally, the United States, knowing that the Soviet Union was there to conquer and overthrow. Russia, being that its borders surrounded the largest landmass of the world, had the largest amount of UFO sightings. If they could capture one of these flying objects and reverse engineer it, they could have the greatest advanced aeronautical designs. They got lucky in January 1986 when a spacecraft crashed in Dalgorsk but remained intact. The craft was back-engineered and the process was quite successful. But to achieve the most superior advancement in global domination, they went in search for something that was only a rumor or legend. The Chamber of Knowledge in Egypt. If the legends were true, storehouse of knowledge left behind by ancient visitors from outer space was concealed in the Great Pyramid. A team of archaeologists were composed of Egyptologists from the Russian Soviet Academy of Science, was sent to Egypt. The fearing that the CIA would learn of this expedition, the Kremlin operated with complete secrecy. By the late 1950s, Egypt accounted for 43% of all the Soviet aid for Third World nations. When they started the ISIS project, the Soviet military personnel in Egypt was estimated over 20,000. The heavy military presence was used to disguise the efforts of the mission scientists headquartered in Cairo. They would operate under the guise of Arab peasants or Russian officers. To speed things up, in 1959 the KGB recruited professional informationalists to wiretap Egyptian officials. This paid off in July 24, 1960, when a conversation was recorded that would then change myth into reality. The official had been given a call that two Bedouin had stumbled upon the tomb of the visitor. The Bedouin were in the hospital and kept repeating, "The visitor God." At this moment in time, Project ISIS became top priority and all efforts were made to immediately follow up by having the Bedouin show them where they had found this tomb. SEIFI was able to purchase several documents and film footage as to the KGB documentations of their findings. Taken out of Egypt and brought to the secret facility of the KGB was this memo to high-ranking KGB official. My agents had secured the notes of one of the scientists working on the tomb of the visitor findings. Another was the inventory of contents taken from the tomb as follows. Location of finding. Undisclosed. 15 crates of relics, 1 partially mummified body, 1 stone sarcophagus, 8 hieroglyphic samples. Old report from a project scientist that was one of the first to enter the tomb. During the inspection of the wall segment, we noted that a strange magnet repulsive force seemed to be emanating from the rock. We were unable to find any scientific explanation. Cryptologist report. Partial decoded message on tomb wall indicating a prophecy of the return of the winged gods. The Kremlin took the cryptologist report very seriously. KGB was ordered to determine target locations: planets, stars, galaxies. They had to duplicate the stars as they would have been over Giza thousands of years ago. They finally found it, in the stars and constellation of Orion during the year 10,500 BC. Although it was possible that the builders could have been working off plans of a time before the pyramids was constructed, this was proven not to be the case. Metal and synthetic materials of tomb were determined to be of unknown origin, and the tomb was carbon dated, giving it a dating of 10,500 BC, meaning the pyramid had to have been made at 10,500 BC. Cans of film were purchased by SEIFI through the Russian mafia agent, which originally came from the maximum security archives of the KGB. These cans contain film of KGB filming the process of the tomb and sarcophagus being opened. Sci-Fi had this film analyzed before purchasing by experts in this field. Finding no evidence of fraud, SEIFI purchased cans of film. The documentary is in black and white, showing soldiers entering the tomb without gas masks. As they opened the sarcophagus, you can see toxic fumes escaping and the reaction of the soldiers as they were being affected. It also shows the mummy contained inside. The film shows the soldiers leaving the tomb fast, and then a chemical warfare specialist team comes in with protective clothing. There is talk from one that was there in the tomb, that the energy inside, during the first days of exploration, was very high. They also had a team of psychics go in and do some special readings of the tomb. It later goes on to show the KGB and Bedouin loading trucks with crates to be shipped back to Russia. According to KGB documents, researchers began to wonder if the pyramid was designed for one particular purpose. They thought it was possibly a machine, being that it was designed like a three-dimensional triangular depiction of a hemisphere. Their thoughts were there must have been a reason why it was designed for resonating with the planet. Their thoughts went to a prism, and that the pyramids have powers to alter the cosmic rays, that the pyramids are huge prisms capable of concentrating energy, capturing light from the stars, which would initiate a process which would turn the pyramid into an interstellar transmitter. The three pyramids and SPHNIX could be integral parts of an immense machine designed by alien engineers linked by a master control mechanism inside the Great Pyramids. They noted that the passageway goes to main chamber, and above the sarcophagus was a tunnelless star shaft. They reasoned that when a specific star alignment occurs, a streak of energy goes down the shaft. Scientists speculated that the radiant energy hitting the sarcophagus could initiate something similar to a cold fusion reaction. The prism structure of the pyramid would then magnify and transfer to the corresponding pyramids. A united beam of energy could erupt, creating a cosmic beacon used by alien starship for future navigation. According to ancient legends all around the world, they all have the same thing in common. The visitors were like men, but more like gods. They were giants. They traveled among the stars. They brought us the knowledge. Legends of the first emperors of China were called the Sons of Heaven and made the first pyramids of China. Mexico and Yucatan have similar legends. Starwalkers can be found throughout Egyptian texts and American folklore. The visitors are described as the giants, man/gods, giants or titans. And it seems all cultures may be traced to a single parent civilization. Could it be ET? Later on in the documentary, it shows them working on the mummy, attempting to give it a face and identity. A computer projection of the mummy was made as it laid in the sarcophagus. Experts that were there to observe the fluorescent reconstruction of the face described to Sci-Fi that if they had not been there themselves, they would not have believed what the face revealed after reconstruction. When skull and face was completed, it showed a humanoid type: large cranium, large eyes, small chin, small teeth, but not Earth humanoid, but some being that had to have been extraterrestrial. Later, using underground radar technology, the KBG found a passageway under the tomb of the visitor. Directly below was a large chamber. They believed they found the chamber of knowledge, but was afraid to open the tomb, thinking it could be a Trojan horse, capable of blowing up the entire planet. They decided to seal the tomb, wipe away the location of the tomb, and close the project. It seemed, however, that all were affected by the discovery. Some had personality changes. Some disappeared entirely, others committed suicide, and others no longer could support their old religious beliefs. The first official report of sightings, that we are aware of, was by King Tutkremeni about 3,400 years ago. Sightings continued through the ages. Sightings seemed to pick up with man mastered the skies. But when we conquered the inner workings of the atom, the aliens of Orion stepped up their observation with an explosion of UFO sightings that continue up to the present. UFO abduction reports began to sweep around the world in the early 60s. A pattern was developing with nearly all abductees reporting physical examinations, insertion of objects and artificial inseminations. Many women abductees believed they were being impregnated to give birth to alien hybrids. In the last decade, reports such as these have risen dramatically. It may be highly likely that the genetic colonization program that started back in the ancient times has resumed. The question was asked, could they be cloning themselves by implanting their alien genes into human DNA? Are humans being transformed into an alien species through genetic engineering? The ancient Egyptians have always said that our DNA came from the heavens and that someday they would return. Did the KGB discover the truth in the chamber of knowledge about the true agenda of the Yet? And what was discovered on the wall of the tomb of the visitor prophesies that they would return. But when? Secrets cannot be contained. Not even KGB secrets. A group of scientists, computer programs, doctors, etc. shortly after the discovery of the tomb of the visitor, came together to discuss the possibilities of this discovery. They fully believed that the visitor was none other than Osiris, the alien king. Thus they gave themselves the name, the Followers, based off the followers of Horus in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. According to Egyptian beliefs, a family of gods came from the stars to Egypt. They were the ones that gave the people of Egypt the knowledge and wisdom. Later they left Earth back to their star homes, except for Osiris. He stayed and taught the followers. It was their duty to protect and keep the ancient knowledge he gave them until his return. The Egyptians were astronomers and fully understood that the stars were the map to the great god Osiris and the afterlife. And followers would secretly come together in their homes to discuss the possibility of the return of Osiris. They believed that the second coming of Osiris would herald a new age for mankind. They believed that when the tomb was discovered and the seal was broken, a signal was transmitted to the visitors. They calculated and estimated the time it would take for the electromagnetic signal to reach the constellation of Orion. They figured that they could return no earlier than April 23, 1985. With that time frame in mind, the group left Russia and took off to Egypt, never to return. The only remains left behind of their meeting with the visitors was a newspaper clippage found in the KGB archives of a group of tourists disappearing in the middle of the night in Egypt, 1985. And one home movie project with film. This film showed the group in front of the pyramid at night. It shows a light appearing in the sky, the group dropping to their knees in prayer, the light becoming brighter and then nothingness. A daughter of parents that were part of this group was shown the home video by the SCIFI team, of which she recognized her parents and burst into tears.
Did anyone happen to see a documentary on sci-fi called Secret KGB UFO Files? I happened to catch this yesterday, and while I'm leaning to the side of skepticism, I have to admit that it was intriguing. Basically, the story goes, in the early 60s the KGB discovered a tomb at the Giza Plateau containing an EBA. Luckily there was film footage, haha. The grainy film contained footage of archaeologists dressed in KGB gear opening the tomb of what was thought to be an ancient Egyptian king. When they do, toxic smoke overcomes one of them and the other two run out. It is later learned that the body isn't human. The footage looked as if it had been produced to look old. Also included were shots of psychics levitating in the tomb. One thing that caught my attention is the archaeologist that was supposed to have been claimed by the toxic smoke was later helping move crates of evidence down some stairs. Despite the curious film footage, the documentary was very interesting and had me glued from the jump. 5 decades. American agencies have stockpiled information on UFOs. So did their counterparts behind the Iron Curtain. Soldiers, scientists and spies all paint a disturbing picture of the KGB's secret campaign. Is this the stunning proof that the Soviets recovered something not from this earth? When US researchers began looking into just how much the Soviet government knew about UFOs and extraterrestrial visitation, They were not surprised to learn that the Russians took the subject very seriously. What they didn't expect was evidence of ancient alien visitation, paranormal properties associated with related artifacts, and most shocking of all, of a mass abduction in 1985, among the piles of materials obtained from former Soviet spies. Some extremely puzzling and disturbing documents and film footage surfaced confirming rumors, which had been circulating for decades. In the late 1950s and 60s, the Russians became very interested in a number of unusual and newly discovered archaeological sites in Egypt by interpreting ancient symbols. One of those sites was believed to contain the remains of a life form not from Earth. Startling top-secret film footage, never before seen outside the Kremlin, confirms the Soviet mission to recover and analyze these remains. Join host Roger Moore in an exclusive investigation into one of the most compelling events of our time.